My new manager is someone I slept with years ago, and he doesn't know we have a child. The backstory: I went back to university in my late 20s to do my PhD and shared an office with a few other students for many years. One of the students, Jacob, completed his thesis and was moving back to his home country, so we all went out for congratulatory/farewell drinks. One thing led to another, and Jacob and I spent the night together. A few weeks later, I realized I was pregnant and I had no way to contact Jacob. His university email and mobile number had been deactivated since he'd left the university and the country. I didn't need anything from him and was fine to raise the child alone, but I thought he had a right to know. I googled him a few times over the years but never found him. This last week, our department head emailed everyone to introduce and welcome our new manager, Jacob, with a photo and a blurb about his education and work history, so I know for sure it's him. The night we spent together changed my life because it made me a parent, so I have thought about Jacob from time to time when my daughter asks about her dad or I notice a genetic trait she didn't get from me. However, I doubt Jacob has given that night a second thought. I have no idea whether he will have any concerns about being my manager given our history, or whether I'm making a bigger deal of this than I should. For what it's worth, in my years of sharing an office with Jacob, he seemed easygoing and practical. In our company, it is common for everyone in the department to reply all to these introduction emails and introduce themselves, welcome the newcomer aboard and explain how their role will interact with theirs. I'm not sure if my email should note that Jacob and I studied together years ago as a way to get that out in the open? Or should I email him individually and offer to have a discussion about keeping our history out of the workplace if he thinks it's needed? I'd appreciate any suggestions for language that indicates I'm not concerned and will be completely professional. And then, in direct contradiction to that, I'd also appreciate a script for a separate email saying, can we please meet outside of work because I need to tell you something important about our history so I can tell him about his daughter. If you or any commenters think I shouldn't tell him, or I should let him settle into his new country and new job first, I would definitely take that on board.
Relevant comment. Allison. Oh my goodness. This is what is professionally referred to as a real clusterfudge. The issue isn't that you're making too big a deal out of it. You're not making a big enough deal of it. It's a really big deal. I'm less concerned about the one night together than I am about the fact that you share a child, and that he doesn't know that yet. Normally the night together would give me some pause too, since he's your manager and that can complicate things, even if you're both scrupulously professional about it, but that's vastly overshadowed by the shared child. Jacob can't possibly be assumed by any objective observer to be able to manage you objectively or credibly or fairly when you have a child together. Your employer almost certainly wouldn't have hired him to manage you if they'd been aware of the situation. Which is no one's fault. Jacob didn't know and doesn't know, your company didn't know, and you had no way of knowing he was under consideration. But here you all are. One of you is almost certainly going to need to change jobs. Until that can happen, the best solution would be for you to report to someone other than Jacob. But how feasible that is depends on things I don't know, like the nature of your jobs. I strongly recommend doing one, and possibly two, things before you do anything else. Definitely talk to a lawyer, and ideally talk to a therapist too. The lawyer because of potential legal ramifications that you want to be prepared for. How will you respond if Jacob wants shared custody? What if your employer tries to push you out? Both of those could end up being non-issues, but the potential ramifications are significant enough that I'd want you going in prepared and with help lined up. And the therapist because the situation is serious enough that some professional guidance will help. Good luck.
OP, thanks for your comment at the top, Allison. The extent to which I tried to find Jacob wasn't relevant to my question, so I didn't include the efforts I went to. For the commenters who are curious, understandably, I really did try when I first found out I was pregnant. I asked the other people we shared an office with, but no one had any information. We were students who shared an office and sometimes went to the uni bar together. We never spent any time together outside of uni. I asked Jacob's thesis supervisor, but it was Christmas/Australian summer here, so he was on leave for 2 months. When he got back, he gave me the address on Jacob's file, which was of course the Australian address he didn't live at anymore. The uni had a next of kin Australian contact number on file for his aunt, but no one ever answered it when I rang. Jacob is Chinese with a very common surname, and Jacob is just the name he used in my country. I don't know his actual given name. So attempts to find the correct Mr. Wong, in a country where they don't use Google or Facebook, went nowhere. I searched for recent publications about Jacob's thesis topic and found a paper with Jacob Wong as one of the authors. I contacted the corresponding author and asked for Jacob's email, but they never responded. By this point, I had to give up because I was so sick with hyperemesis gravidarum and needed to focus on my baby's health. Update. Thank you for answering my letter. You were right, it was a really big deal. I was viewing the Jacob as my manager problem from his perspective, until I told him otherwise. It was just a simple one-night stand over a decade ago, and it didn't seem like a huge problem. I hated and appreciated the reality check. I regret reading the comments, but thank you also for moderating them as quickly as you did. A lot happened in a short space of time. Thankfully, I already had a therapist. First, I spoke to my union rep who said, "Say nothing but call us if HR tries to set up a meeting with you." Staying silent and having Jacob independently declare the prior relationship when he arrived would have been problematic because I'd still end up in the same position and I would have lied by omission. Our HR team can be gossipy and they know the age of my half-Chinese daughter, so I needed to have as much control as possible over the disclosure. I spoke to an employment lawyer who reviewed our policies and, at his suggestion, I wrote an email to HR declaring a prior relationship with Jacob. And then I was immediately pushed out. Even if you have all the legal support in the world, you can't prevent someone from doing something illegal, you just have recourse afterwards. In a meeting with my lawyer, the union rep, HR, and a member of the senior management team, I was asked to resign. When I said no, they insisted on a statutory declaration about the relationship with Jacob stating what happened, when it happened, how many times it happened, and who initiated it. I also said no to that. We ended the meeting with each side agreeing to think about possible solutions. The company's solution was to start messing with my pay, my benefits, my swipe card access to my office, my computer login, and my email/calendar account. They spread rumors about me and I heard coworkers whispering that I'd had an affair with a manager. They sent me for a random drug test at a time when I was scheduled for an important meeting with clients. They canceled accommodation that had been booked for upcoming travel, which I only found out about because I was getting paranoid and called the hotel. I can't describe how awful it feels to know that someone with this kind of power over your job is devoting their time and energy to thinking of ways to screw with you. Every day I was going into work wondering what was waiting for me and it was wearing me down fast. The advice from the union rep was to go back in time and follow their first piece of advice, or just keep documenting everything as we prepared to take legal action. The lawyer estimated that it would take at least a year to get any kind of resolution, and I didn't even want the job anymore. By this point, I wasn't sleeping much and I had cried a few times at work. I was beginning to crack and we were only just getting started. So, I resigned. I wish I'd held up better under the pressure, but it was all just too much with the looming deadline of Jacob's start date at our office, and whatever way HR was going to drag him into this. I'm lucky that I can take my time looking for a new job, so I've had some space to process everything. Outside of the work stuff, I spoke with a family lawyer who outlined all the possible ways this situation could go, and what the most likely outcomes were. Basically, my daughter is old enough that what she wants would get heavily weighted by a court if it came to that. I have spoken to my daughter many times about her father. I told her what I knew about him and that I had tried to contact him. I've offered for her to see a therapist if she ever wanted to talk about it with someone who wasn't me, and she has always said thanks, but no thanks. The family lawyer helped me write a letter which I left for Jacob. I told him about his daughter, said I wasn't trying to get anything from him, and gave him the contact details of my lawyer. After a few weeks of me freaking out that HR had somehow intercepted the letter, he emailed my lawyer. He was the easygoing and practical Jacob I remembered. He was still processing it but said he wasn't going to take any legal steps. He offered us his family medical history, he apologized if I resigned because of him, and he said he would like to meet our daughter if she's interested. She also has some siblings. I told her all this. She said she's happy that she has her father's contact info, but she doesn't want to meet him right now. She's of the view that having him in our lives would cause unwanted disruption. And she doesn't even know about the work clusterfudge. Update 2. I'm incredibly grateful for the support you and the AAM community gave me at a stressful time, so I thought I'd share a final update. My daughter changed her mind and has been in contact with Jacob. It's still a bit awkward between them, but they have some hobbies in common, which they've bonded over. My daughter also seems very excited to have some siblings who adore their cool new big sister. I know some people were wondering why my old company reacted the way they did. For reasons I can't go into, my work gets scrutinized by outside authorities and my manager's role is primarily a quality control one. Any suggestion that my manager had not checked my work impartially enough due to a personal relationship could have been career-ending for both of us. Additionally, the work I do is in a very specialist field and there are only a handful of people in the country who do it. Another company in a similar field had initially approached Jacob, who has had an amazing career by the sounds of it, to start a new department at their company doing the same thing. My old company paid a buttload of money to lure him over so that he wouldn't be in direct competition for clients and employees. All of this meant that I couldn't report to Jacob, there was no other manager I could report to, and the company couldn't risk him going back to their competitor. Between the two of us, Jacob was the better asset to keep and the worse threat to lose. I'm not excusing the behavior of my old company, but there was a logic to it. I'm still angry about the way they treated me and how helpless I felt, but that is slowly fading over time. I had trouble finding a new job. Financially, we were okay, so I was being picky, e.g. wanting to stay in my current city. After almost a year out of work, Jacob told me he'd been approached by the first company who still wanted him to start their new department. He was happy at my old company, but he offered to take the new role if I wanted to try to get my old job back. I would never ask him to do that, and I also never want to go anywhere near that company again, so I said no. Jacob turned the other company down but gave them my name. It's a step up from where I was, but they interviewed me and I got the job. I've been here about 6 months and it's enjoyable so far, plus I've never procreated with anyone in my chain of command, so it seems like a good place to work. I've hired one of my former co-workers, plus 2 recent graduates from my alma mater who are bright, motivated and quickly getting up to speed. Unlike my old company, we don't have a lengthy waitlist for our services, yet. So a few clients have started coming to us instead of them. I am delighted that I am becoming the very threat my old company was trying to avoid when they pushed me out.